Today we'll draw a cute girl with a baby duck in Procreate. You'll get a free drawing guide, brushes, and a color palette to follow along. I'll guide you step by step and share helpful tips and tricks, secret techniques, and Procreate features I use all the time. To follow along with me, you can download a free file that includes a detail palette, a reference image, a canvas, a guide, and a paper texture. My patrons get access to a more detailed guide, exclusive lessons, and the full set of brushes. 3 of those brushes are also available for free to everyone, and those are the ones I'll be using in this tutorial. Let's begin with creating a new layer. Next, pick the right color from the palette, and then we'll use the signature graphite. This is the first of the 3 basic brushes everyone has access to. Before we start drawing, let's adjust the brush size to what feels best. This brush is really versatile, we'll be using it a lot, so it's worth understanding how it behaves. For the eraser, we'll also choose signature. I always use this brush as an eraser because it lets you either gently soften the drawing or completely erase it. If you want to clear the whole layer from everything you've drawn, use this gesture. To quickly switch between the brush and eraser, just double-tap the pencil. Don't try to get everything perfect at once. If something goes off, you can always fix the shape with the eraser. Just make sure the size fits what you need. To fill in shapes, increase the brush size. Now that the head shape is ready, let's create a new layer and draw the hair. I'll be using the pastel pencil here. That's the second basic brush, also free for everyone. When I draw with this brush, pay attention to the size I use, because size really matters for this one. Now I'll show you how to draw with it when you want a stronger fill. If you want a denser line, just go over it a few times. But if you want a softer line, don't keep drawing over the same spot. This brush behavior also depends a lot on pressure. Just a bit more pressure and the stroke changes. To undo, tap the screen with 2 fingers. To redo, tap with 3 fingers. See in this example how the eraser takes away part of the texture. That's intentional because a flat, even texture along the edge looks boring. You want to add rhythm and some visual variety. I'll show you different ways to do that later on, but erasing parts of the texture is one of my favorite tricks. Now I'll show you how easy it is to adjust the density of the shape. If what you've drawn feels too light or airy, just duplicate the layer and then merge the copy with the original layer. For filling, the best brush is the signature. Let's increase the size and fill the shape. Create a new layer and draw the ear over the hair. Don't press too hard on the pencil when you want a more solid, clean line. If you press harder, it starts giving too much texture. Sometimes that's good, but not for what we need here. I use the eraser to tidy up the eyebrow a bit. Then make it denser. We have great tools for warping shapes. We'll use them a lot, so whenever you see something you want to bend or distort in any way, use the transform tools. Duplicate this layer, flip it horizontally, and then move it to the right. To work with a reference, unlock its layer and then move it where you need. You don't have to tap directly on the reference itself, it will move following your pencil's motion on the canvas. After moving it, don't forget to lock the layer again, so you don't accidentally start drawing on it. Let's create another layer for the hair. This one should go behind all the current layers. Once the hair is drawn this way, we'll move forward. When you need a more natural brush instead of a textured one, the signature graphite in a smaller size always works perfectly. Right now I'm using Autofill to fill in the neck. Autofill is a handy feature, but I prefer to fill shapes manually most of the time. Remember to turn off the template when you've already drawn the shape and want to see it clearly. The nose is a great example of how you can quickly adjust proportions and soften transitions a bit using the eraser. Now we'll start drawing the eyes. It's much easier than it looks. The trick is to place a certain number of drawn circles inside the eye shape using a clipping mask. First, draw the main shape. The signature graphite works best for this. You might run into a situation when instead of filling just the area you want, the whole canvas gets filled. You can control this by moving the pencil left or right on the canvas. Imagine you're drawing an invisible line without lifting your hand. To draw the second eye shape, I'll flip the whole canvas horizontally, so I don't have to reach across the screen. Let's start drawing the circles by creating a layer for the first one. Don't overthink it. Just draw a circle roughly, hold the pencil on the canvas for a couple of seconds without lifting it, then choose the circle in the options above. Duplicate the circle, pick the next color, and fill it in. Move this circle down and increase its size. Now we do the same thing. We need to create another circle and fill it with the next color. Let's move that layer down and increase its size. To create a highlight, we'll quickly practice making a color ourselves. We need the Value tab. There we have hue, saturation, and brightness. Right now we're only interested in saturation and brightness. Let's reduce the saturation to 0 and raise the brightness to 100. That's how we get pure white. We paint the highlight and lower the opacity of that layer. Before we continue with the clipping mask, I want to show you how I prefer to draw eyes. I use other brushes from the set for this, and if you're curious how those brushes work, you can check out the demo video where I show each brush in action and how to use them. The link is in the description. If you want to try this method but prefer to use only 3 basic brushes I gave you, go with a pastel pencil. It's a very versatile brush, and you'll see later on that the whole illustration can be drawn with just those 3 basic brushes without losing visual interest. The other brushes are for those who want to expand their toolkit, since some of them even help you find your own style. Let's select these layers and move them up. I will hide the other layers just so you can clearly see how the clipping mask works. Select the layer and tap Clipping Mask. You don't actually need a clipping mask for the highlight, but we'll add it so it groups together with other eye layers. Next, duplicate each of these layers and move them all up. After that, move these layers to the left. You don't have to follow this exactly, but I merge layers to make the eyes take up less space in the Layers panel. You might also notice that I replaced the highlights with ones in my own style. They're not perfect, and their color is a bit darker. By the end of the lesson, you'll easily be able to change any shades and colors yourself. For lines like this, the mellow pencil works best. Among the basic brushes, the pastel pencil will replace it, of course. To make it as dense as mellow pencil, you'll need to duplicate it a few times, like I showed earlier. If you want your Layers panel to stay more organized, add layers to groups. Let's draw lips using the signature graphite and the eraser. Here, the signature brush should be set to a very small size. For drawing details like the corners of the lips, I usually go with the plush pencil. It's also great for soft, subtle lines. In the basic set, you can replace it with the signature. Just be careful not to press too hard on the pencil. That way you can get smoother transitions. For those who have the full set of my brushes, you might want to try the hazy graphite for drawing the cheeks. That said, the signature will do just fine for this task too. Let's increase the size of the signature a bit to make it softer and more textured. The third basic brush available to everyone for free is the gesture pencil. It's perfect for lines as well as this kind of details. Sometimes you want it a bit softer than the brush can give you. In those cases, try adding a Gaussian blur. Just a couple of % of blur makes a noticeable difference, so don't overdo it. You can't just start drawing the character as is because she's wearing a white t-shirt. It'll be hard to see what you're drawing. So before that, either fill the background with some color, or draw a large background element that will make the white t-shirt stand out clearly. Now we can draw the t-shirt. I'll fill in this sleeve first, then cut it out and add it as a new layer. For the selection, I use the Freehand selection. Then with this gesture, open the menu and choose Cut and Paste. Now the sleeve is on its own layer. I'll hide it for now and draw the main t-shirt layer. Make the sleeve layer visible again, and we move forward. This is a great example of when it's useful to start with something like a sketch. We're drawing a guide for ourselves, so no need to be too precise here. It's important to mark out the proportions and structure of what we want to draw. Sometimes just a fragment is enough. Create a new layer above the sketch and confidently draw what you need. The sketch can be deleted afterward, since we don't need it anymore. Here I want to point out something important. I recommend drawing in pieces. This way, if you make a mistake, you can easily step back as many times as you want. But if you draw everything without lifting your hand, the only undo you'll have is the moment before you started drawing. So work in fragments, that'll save you from trouble. Draw the hand following my guide. Just repeat after me. The key when drawing hands is not to overcomplicate things. After making those lines, gradually build up the thickness of the fingers. Then, to add density and texture variety, switch to the signature and reduce its size. Drawing the other hand is much easier. It's basically a silhouette, so keep it simple. Next, we move on to the legs. It's pretty straightforward here, plus the grass will partially cover the legs later on. I'm using the same trick as when drawing the eye, but this time we'll choose an ellipse instead of circle. You can also tweak its proportion a bit like this. Here with the eraser, we create the impression that the fingers are sitting on top of this layer, even though they actually aren't. Before drawing the baby duck, let's draw the grass first. The shape of the baby duck we'll draw on one layer so it looks like a silhouette. To draw the beak, I suggest using the same approach as with drawn clothes. Start by making something like a sketch for yourself. If you're confused about which colors to use where, just check the reference. Group the layers related to the beak, then move on to drawing the cheeks. In cases like this, always increase the brush size to get a softer, more textured impression. We'll add details to the girl and the baby duck a little later, when I teach you how to pick colors yourself. For now, let's focus on drawing this scene. Here let's really enlarge the brush and with the light touch, create something like a mist behind the bush to separate it from the background a bit. Don't overdo it, we want just a little light haze. You can even reduce the layer's opacity. To draw the bubbles, start by selecting white. After that, open the layer settings and choose Soft Light. The bush and sky's hue is around 205. We'll create quite a big distance and change the value to something close to 180. Then adjust the saturation and brightness. Set the parameters like I do, then fill the layer. I'll show you the difference again. Watch what happens if we slightly increase the saturation. You can adjust the density the same way here. Create a new layer, pick white, and draw a highlight. Use the eraser to soften the transition. I'll show you an example of how to paint similar elements with a textured brush. I'll draw a circle without lifting my hand, then pause briefly to get a perfect shape. Add density and fill the form. Apply soft light and you get a really nice bubble with a textured edge. You can of course use the pastel pencil or the signature graphite for this. To fill a new bubble with the color we've created for the previous one, I'll change the previous bubble's blending mode to normal, pick its color, and fill the second bubble. Copy the highlight and adjust its shape slightly. I'll put all the bubbles in one group, then create a new layer to sketch a flower. Draw something like this, then create a new layer and draw the petals. If you want a perfect flower, just duplicate and rotate the petals. Merge all the petals. Draw the flower's center. Delete your sketch. Then lower the flower's opacity so it blends with the background without standing out too much. After duplicating this flower and placing it where you want, move on to drawing the next flower the same way. First sketch, then paint. While sketching, follow my lead. As you can see, I'm not trying to be neat. I'm just marking roughly how I want to position the petals. Let's create a new layer and reduce the saturation. Not all the way to 0, but enough so the color isn't too bright. Now just paint over our sketch petal by petal. We'll draw other flowers and I'll show you how to use the transparency mask. First, I'll simply duplicate the layers and then change their color. Let's arrange the flowers following the reference and draw the stems for them. Now we move on to picking colors and creating masks. Sample the color from the flower and check the hue value. Here it's about 204. Step back and set the value to 195. Then adjust the saturation and brightness. Make a few samples until you find the right combination. For me, brightness is 81 and saturation is about 38. Fill the layer with this color, then go to the Layers panel, tap on the layer and add the mask. The color icon immediately switches to black. I fill the mask with black. To switch to white, just tap and hold briefly on the color icon. White reveals the layer, black hides it. So now we are painting with white on black to bring parts of the layer back. Once done, you can merge the mask and the layer, then move on to the next flower. Here our hue is 10. We'll step back just one notch and change it to 5. Then adjust saturation and brightness again like before. I settled on 56 saturation and 98 brightness. You don't need to match my numbers exactly, just pick values close to these. The next flower's hue is also 10. This time we'll lower it all the way to 0. Then find saturation and brightness that work for you. Moving on to drawing the lines for the girl's clothing. I'll use the color we just created, but adjust the saturation a little. One of my favorite tricks is to completely fill the layer with the desired color, apply a transparency mask, make the layer fully invisible, and then paint on the mask with white. It lets me freely switch between colors without worrying that the carefully chosen color will get lost among the others. Using this method, you can switch to any other color, then just go back to the mask layer and paint with the color you want by choosing white. Now I need to add a shadow to this layer, but I don't have the right color in my palette. Luckily, it's on the mask layer. All I have to do is to disable the mask, pick the color, then enable the mask again. When drawing shadows like this, it's better to add some nuance. Switch to the eraser, pick the right size, and gently soften the edges of the shadow like this. Here we'll create a color close to white, but not pure white. Then switch to the eraser and soften those lines a bit. Now let's create a light gray color for the lines. To add the shadows on the neck, create a new layer and apply a clipping mask to it. Then pick the base color you want to work from and check its values. We see that hue is around 25. Let's step back one step and change it to 20. After that, adjust the saturation and brightness to what looks good. If you want to tweak the saturation and brightness after you've drawn the shadow, just adjust those settings and fill the layer again. We'll add some details to the ear using the gesture pencil, then move on to drawing lines in the hair. The hue here is about 12, so we shouldn't step too far off. We'll lower it to 10, then adjust the rest of the settings as usual. In cases like this, if the hue changes too much from the original, the color ends up standing out too much. What we want is something very close to the base color, but just a bit different. For those who have the full set of my brushes, try to use these. They generally work well in these situations. If you're working with basic brushes, I recommend using the pastel pencil. You can even change the color on individual lines within the same layer. To do this, kinda simply draw an invisible line with the pencil to the right. I'll show you a few more examples of creating custom colors. Take this yellow for example. Step back one step to get 35, then adjust saturation and brightness. Now we are going to paint a very important layer that will make it look like both our characters and flowers are standing on the soft grass. Let's draw lines to add detail to the grass, then paint a grass pattern. To do this, it's better to lower the brightness a bit. Finally, I'll add lines on the arms. We've already made this color when adding shadows on the neck. You don't have to copy that color exactly, just remember the main point. We step the hue back one step from 25 to 20. We'll do the same here and choose saturation and brightness by eye. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss new tutorials on my channel. Thanks for watching, see you soon!